You feel too much. You've been told that your whole life, haven't you? Too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. And somewhere along the way, you started to believe it, that there was something fundamentally broken about the way you experience the world. But what if everything you've been told about that is wrong? What if the thing that's made your life harder, the thing that's exhausted you, the thing that's made you cry at commercials and lie awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, what if that thing is actually one of the rarest psychological gifts a human being can have? By the end of this, you'll understand something about yourself that most people spend their whole life never figuring out. Picture this. It's a regular Tuesday. You're at work or on the train or just scrolling through your phone. Someone sends you a text, a short one, no punctuation, kind of cold. And within seconds, your chest tightens. Your mind starts racing. You're already constructing 5 different versions of what they might mean, what you did wrong, whether the friendship is quietly falling apart. Meanwhile, the person sitting next to you on that train, they got the same kind of text. They typed back "LOL" and moved on with their day, and you're sitting there feeling everything, the weight of it, the texture of it, like the volume on your emotional life is permanently cranked to 11, and you can't find the dial. You're not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. And here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It has a name. It has a neurological explanation. And it's more common than society ever lets you believe. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A study published in the journal Brain and Behavior found that people with what researchers call sensory processing sensitivity, sometimes called high sensitivity, actually have measurably higher brain activation in the areas responsible for awareness, empathy, and emotional processing. The insular and the mirror neuron systems in their brains literally fire differently. Translation: you're not choosing to feel more. Your brain is physically built to absorb more of the world than most people ever will. And here's the statistic that stopped me cold when I first found it. Research from psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron, who has spent over 3 decades studying this, suggests that somewhere between 15 and 20% of the population has this trait. That's roughly 1 in 5 people. 1 in 5 people walking around feeling everything at 10 times the intensity, most of them quietly convinced that something is wrong with them. A follow-up study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that highly sensitive people process social information more deeply and show stronger emotional responses to both positive and negative stimuli. The amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system, doesn't just ring for them, it reverberates. Translation: you don't just feel things, you feel the layers underneath things. But where does this come from? Because it didn't start on that Tuesday on the train. It started much, much earlier. When you were around 7 or 8 years old, you were already noticing things other kids weren't. The tension in the room when your parents argued, even if they kept their voices low. The look on your teacher's face that told you something was wrong before she said a word. The way a certain song could make you feel something so big you didn't have language for it yet. And by the time you were 12, you'd learned 2 things simultaneously: that you could feel everything, and that the world wasn't always safe to show that in. Maybe you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, in that era when toughen up was practically a parenting philosophy, when being emotional was treated like a character flaw, when the cultural message everywhere, from action movies to how boys were raised to how girls were told to calm down, was that feelings were weakness and sensitivity was something to be ashamed of and hidden. So you learned to hide it. You got good at performing okayness. You built a version of yourself that could hold it together in public and then go home and feel absolutely everything behind closed doors. And that gap between who you showed the world and what you actually felt became exhausting in a way you could never quite explain to anyone. That's not a personal failure. That's what happens when a nervous system built for depth gets raised in a world that rewards surface. But wait, there's a darker side to this. Here's what's fascinating. The the same trait that makes you feel pain more intensely. It makes you feel joy more intensely too. And this is the paradox that most people who feel deeply never fully reckon with. And this explains why you can be moved to actual tears by a piece of music. Not because you're fragile, but because you're receiving it at a frequency most people can't access. It explains why your relationships, when they're good, feel like nothing else on earth. Why you notice beauty in places other people walk straight past. Why you can sit with someone in their pain and make them feel genuinely less alone in a way that almost feels like a superpower. But it also explains why conflict feels catastrophic to you even when it's minor. Why criticism doesn't just sting, it echoes. Why you can walk into a room and immediately absorb everyone else's emotional weather until you're not even sure which feelings are yours anymore. It explains why you give everything in relationships and sometimes end up running on empty. Why you've been called too much by people who are simply not enough. Why you've spent years trying to shrink a part of yourself that was never meant to be small. And this explains everything about your relationships. Here's the thing society consistently gets wrong about people like you. The world tends to frame sensitivity as a liability, a vulnerability, something that makes you less equipped for modern life, less resilient, less functional, less able to handle the sharp edges of reality. While everyone else seems to move through life with a kind of emotional Teflon, you absorb everything. And so the narrative becomes that you're the one who needs to change, develop thicker skin, stop taking things personally, learn to switch it off. But that framing has it completely backwards. The research on empathy, creativity, and social connection consistently shows that the traits associated with high sensitivity, deep processing, emotional attunement, noticing subtleties others miss, are the same traits that produce the most innovative thinkers, the most effective leaders, the most profound artists, and the most deeply connected human beings. You're not bad at being human. You might be extraordinarily good at it. And that's not something a world obsessed with productivity and performance has ever been particularly good at celebrating. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds reframes everything. The truth is, feeling everything more intensely isn't a disorder or a deficiency. It's a different operating system, one that runs deeper, processes more, and yes, demands more maintenance. But it outputs something the world genuinely cannot afford to lose. Think about every person who has ever made you feel truly understood, who sat with you in something painful and didn't try to fix it or rush past it, who created something, a song, a story, a piece of art, that made you feel less alone in the specific ache of being human. I would bet almost anything that they felt things the way you do, that they were told they were too much, and that they turned that intensity into something extraordinary. Your sensitivity is not the problem. It never was. The problem was a world that didn't have the vocabulary to honor it. So here's where I want to leave you. Remember that Tuesday on the train, that tightening in your chest over a 2-word text? That still might happen. I'm not going to tell you that understanding this changes the experience of it overnight. But here's what I want you to carry with you. That moment of feeling everything, that moment everyone around you seems to brush off so easily. You were never overreacting. You were just operating at full capacity in a world that runs on half. And that, quietly, is one of the most remarkable things a person can be. If this resonated with something you've never quite been able to explain about yourself, you'll want to watch this next video, because we go even deeper into why highly sensitive people tend to struggle most in specific relationships, and what changes when you finally stop apologizing for the way you're wired.